Have you ever really thought about it? What's the actual fundamental difference between a rock and a rabbit? Or, say, a crystal in a tree? It's not just about movement, you know. It's about this constant, invisible hum of activity deep inside. Today, we're going to follow that activity by tracing the absolutely incredible journey of a simple sandwich, as it becomes the very energy that powers life itself. Let's dive in.
So yeah, let's kick things off with that big question. What's the real difference between a rock and a rabbit? It seems so obvious at first, right? One zips around, the other just sits there. But what about our rabbit when it's asleep, or a crystal that's slowly growing? The signs we can see with our own eyes can be a little misleading. The true answer lies deep down, in this constant, invisible buzz of activity happening at the molecular level.
To really nail this down, biologists basically have a three-point checklist for what makes something alive. First up is organization. Living things are just these masterpieces of ordered construction, from molecules all the way up. Second, you've got maintenance. See, the universe is always trying to break things down into chaos, so life has to constantly fight back, repairing itself. And third, the thing that powers it all, molecular movement. This is the constant, invisible dance of chemical reactions that is the true engine of life. But you know, this is where our neat and tidy definitions start to get tricky. Take a virus, for example. On its own, it's about as alive as a speck of dust. No movement, no maintenance, nothing. But the second it gets inside a living cell, it becomes this master hijacker, taking over the cell's machinery to make copies of itself. So this raises a huge question. Is a virus actually alive? It's a real biological puzzle, and we'll definitely circle back to it. Okay, so all that maintenance we talked about, it requires a ton of energy. And here on Earth, life has basically come up with two fundamental strategies for getting that fuel. You either make it yourself, or you take it from someone or something that already did. On one side, we have the autotrophs, which literally means self-feeders. Just think of plants, right? They use sunlight to cook up their own meals from basic stuff like carbon dioxide and water. And on the other side, we've got the heterotrophs, the other feeders. And yep, that's us. We can't make our own food, so we have to eat other living things, either the plants themselves or an animal that ate a plant. So how do plants pull off this magic trick? Well, photosynthesis is this beautiful three-step process. First, chlorophyll in the leaves absorbs sunlight. Second, that light energy gets converted into chemical energy, which is powerful enough to split water molecules. And third, this new chemical energy is used to turn carbon dioxide into energy-rich carbohydrates. Any extra energy the plant makes, it stores as starch, which of course is the very foundation of the bread in our sandwich.
And that brings us right to our journey. As heterotrophs, we can't use that plant starch directly. We need to break it all down. So let's follow that sandwich as it goes through the human body's incredible disassembly line, the digestive system.
This whole trip takes place down a long, specialized tube called the alimentary canal. It all starts in the mouth, then gets squeezed down the esophagus by these rhythmic muscle contractions. That process is called peristalsis. Next, it drops into the acid bath of the stomach before entering the small intestine, which is where the real work of nutrient extraction happens. And finally, the large intestine does the cleanup, reabsorbing water. The instant you take a bite, the chemical breakdown begins. I mean, right away. Your saliva is loaded with an enzyme called salivary amylase, which immediately starts attacking the starch from the bread, breaking it down into simpler sugars before you've even had a chance to swallow. Next stop, the stomach. And this place is basically a vat of hydrochloric acid. It creates this intensely acidic environment that's just perfect for an enzyme called pepsin to start demolishing the proteins from, say, the meat or cheese in our sandwich. The only thing stopping the stomach from digesting itself, by the way, is a crucial layer of protective mucus. And now, we enter the main event, the small intestine. This is where digestion really gets finished. The liver sends in bile to emulsify fats, which basically means breaking big blobs of grease into tiny, microscopic droplets so enzymes can get to them. Then, the pancreas deploys its own chemical weapons. Trypsin continues to shred proteins, and lipase goes to work on all those newly exposed fats. It's just a beautifully coordinated chemical assault. So once everything is broken down into its basic building blocks, how does it get into our body? Well, the small intestine is lined with millions of tiny, finger-like projections called villi. And get this, if you could somehow unfold them all and lay them flat, they would cover a surface area of about 70 square meters. That's roughly the size of a small apartment, all packed inside you just to maximize nutrient absorption. It's incredible.
So our sandwich has now been reduced to simple molecules, and they're floating around in our blood. But how does that fuel get from our gut to, I don't know, a muscle cell in our arm? And then how is it actually converted into usable power? Well, that requires a delivery network and some cellular power plants.
Think of the body's highways as its blood vessels. Arteries are the high-pressure outbound lanes. They have these thick, elastic walls to handle the sheer force of blood being pumped away from the heart. Veins, on the other hand, are the low-pressure return lanes. Their walls are much thinner, and they have these really clever one-way valves to make absolutely sure the blood doesn't flow backward on its long journey back to the heart.
So, what is the ultimate point of this whole complicated process? It all comes down to creating one single, amazing molecule, ATP, or adenosine triphosphate. You should think of ATP as the universal energy currency for all life on Earth. Whenever a cell needs to do any work, contract a muscle, fire a neuron, anything, it pays for that job by spending a molecule of ATP.
Now, our cells can make this currency in two main ways. The most efficient by far is aerobic respiration, which happens in the mitochondria. Think of these as clean, highly efficient power plants that use oxygen to squeeze every last drop of energy out of glucose. But when you're sprinting and you just can't get enough oxygen, your cells switch to anaerobic respiration. It's like a quick and dirty backup generator. It's way less efficient, and it produces lactic acid, and that's the burn you feel in your muscles.
To keep those efficient aerobic power plants running, we need a constant supply of oxygen. And that, of course, is the job of the lungs. Air travels down through these branching tubes until it reaches millions of tiny air sacs called alveoli. Here, the walls are so incredibly thin that oxygen can pass directly into the bloodstream, where it literally hitches a ride on hemoglobin molecules inside your red blood cells for delivery all across the body.
But every factory produces waste, and all these metabolic processes, breaking down food, making energy, they create harmful byproducts. Maintaining life's delicate order means you have to have a really efficient system for taking out the trash.
This is the primary job of the kidneys, which contain millions of tiny filtering units called nephrons. And their strategy is just simple but brilliant. First, under high pressure, they filter everything small out of the blood, both the trash and the treasure. Then, in the second step, they selectively reabsorb all the good stuff the body wants to keep, like glucose and water. And what's left behind? That's the concentrated waste that we know as urine.
This really highlights a key difference between animal and plant life. We have these unbelievably complex, specialized organs just for waste removal. Plants, though, with their much lower metabolism, they take a way simpler approach. They can store waste in their leaves and then just drop them, or ooze it out as resin, or even push it out through their roots right into the soil.
So as we've seen, it's not just one single process, but a whole collection of them. Each one is a marvel of biological engineering on its own, and they are all woven together into this single interconnected web that we call life.
The big takeaway here is this. From that simple sandwich to the power that fuels every single one of your cells, it's all one continuous flow. The digestive system provides the raw materials. The respiratory system unlocks their energy. The transport system delivers that energy everywhere it needs to go. And the excretory system cleans up the mess. And the critical part? None of these systems can function without all the others.
Which brings us right back to our puzzle from the beginning. If life is this intricate, self-sustaining web of processes, what does it really mean when something that isn't even alive, like a virus, can come in and hijack the entire machine for its own purposes? It really forces us to question the very boundary we draw between a complex chemical reaction and a living thing. Where does one truly end and the other begin?